We're trying to figure out why this doesn't have any audio. Hold on one second.
To sections or instances that gives the Secretary of HHS enormous amounts of discretion to administer health care. Meaning, I don't think Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and Harry Reid, when they crammed this bill through, ever thought Donald Trump would be president and Tom Price would be the Secretary of HHS. So, number two in our three-pronged approach, administrative action where the Health and Human Services Secretary deregulates the marketplace and allows more choice and more competition to come into the marketplace. Number three, and this is where I think there's a lot of confusion all over the map, additional legislation that we feel is important and necessary to give us a truly competitive healthcare market that we think is really important to get regulatory competition, to give people even more choices. Association health plans. Let a farmer buy her insurance through the National Farm Bureau plan, or a restaurateur buy his insurance for he and his employees through the National Restaurant Association plan on a nationwide basis. Let small businesses buy their insurance through the NFIB plan nationwide. We would love for that to be in this reconciliation bill, but the rules in the Senate don't allow that to happen. So we're going to move those bills independently. We're going to move those bills at the same time through our process and bring those to the vote. Unfortunately, they'll have to hit what we call the 60-vote threshold. So we have a three-pronged approach to repealing and replacing Obamacare. Let's get into why this needs to happen and why it needs to happen now. Options are disappearing fast. This law is in the middle of a collapse, and people are quickly losing their choices. In 2016, the amount of counties in America that had three or more insurers, three or more carriers to choose from, was about 2,000. In 2017, that number has plummeted. Insurers are leaving the marketplace, choice and competition is going away, and people are having less choices. How many insurers, how many counties in America that had just one insurer? A little over 200 just last year. So in America, about 200 counties had only one plan to choose from, one insurer. This year, in 2017, that number has skyrocketed to over 1,000 counties. Over 1 in 3 counties in America, you got one plan to choose from. These insurers probably never intended on being monopolists, but they are in these counties. There is no choice, no competition, one plan to choose from. It's a 454% increase in American counties of people who are stuck with one option. Now that Humana has said that they're going to pull out of the marketplace next year, there are going to be counties that will have 0 options. So here is what is happening under a law that is collapsing. Premiums are going up and going up at a very, very fast clip. Options and choices are going down. So what we're seeing in America is people who have to go buy their own health insurance are getting far, far fewer choices, down to the point where they have one in 1 out of 3 counties in America, and the price they pay for that coverage is going up and up and up. Take a look at what's going on around the country. This just shows you a map of the premium increases just this year alone. Minnesota, 59% increase in their health insurance premiums. Pennsylvania, 53% increase in their health insurance premiums. Tennessee, 63% increase in their health insurance premiums this year alone, over 1 year. Alabama, 58%. Oklahoma, 69% increase in their health insurance premiums. Nebraska, 51% increase in their health insurance premiums. Arizona clocked in at a 116% increase in their health insurance premiums with Obamacare. Here's what's happening. Quote, Obamacare is in a death spiral. It is not getting any better, it's getting worse. That's the CEO of one of America's leading health insurance companies, Aetna, said this just a couple weeks ago. What is a death spiral? It's a weird term. It's kind of gruesome if you ask me. A death spiral is a system where in an insurance pool, only sicker people who absolutely have to have the insurance buy it. And healthier people who want the insurance won't pay those really high prices because it's too expensive, and they don't absolutely have to have it because they're healthy. So in any kind of a pool, typically you have a healthy person paying premiums to subsidize that sick person. But the way they just set up Obamacare, it's not working that way. So only the people who must have health insurance, the older and sicker person's buying it, it's cranking up the cost of the insurance so fast that the premiums are just spiraling out of control, and the insurers are losing so much money that they're just pulling out of the marketplace. That's called the death spiral. It is literally an actuarial or mathematical collapse of the insurance markets. That's what America is facing today. If we simply did nothing, just washed our hands of it, if we in the majority party said, you know what, the Democrats gave us Obamacare, let them live with it, the collateral damage in this country would be awful. More and more people would see even higher premium increases in 2018. More and more people would just see zero choices. We can't do that. The goal of healthcare reform has always been one we all share. The goal of healthcare reform is people get access to affordable coverage. Our goal is use choice and competition, not government coercion and mandates. So here is what we propose. Here is the American Health Care Act, the bill that is moving through the committee process through regular order today, the bill that's going to take 3 weeks just to move through the House because we are following regular order. Lower costs, more choices, not less, patients in control, universal access to care. These are the 4 driving principles that we are focused on: lowering the costs, giving people more choices, having patients in control, and universal access to care. Let me walk you through how exactly we propose to do this. These are long-standing conservative principles that those of us who've been working in healthcare for about 20 years have been fighting for, dreaming about, working toward. Now we have an opportunity to do that. How do we do this? First of all, you got to repeal this law. You've got to repeal the taxes in Obamacare. It's $1 trillion in taxes on Obamacare that make it harder to make medical devices, that make it harder to lower costs in health insurance, that drive up the cost of healthcare. The spending. The spending in Obamacare is getting out of control. It's a debt explosion. But more importantly, the way the system works is it's driving up the costs and the mandates. The mandates are arrogant and paternalistic. It is the government at the federal level telling people, this is what you have to buy. It's going to be really expensive. You must do it. If you don't like it, tough. That's what the government is saying to Americans today. So we get rid of the taxes, we get rid of the spending, we get rid of the mandates. The key thing that a lot of people want to know, when I do my listening sessions, when I talk to people with various disease advocacy groups, is they just want to know that when we pass this, the next day they're not going to lose their health insurance. That's not going to happen. We pass this law, and the day after, Americans who have insurance aren't going to lose it the day after. We need to have a stable transition to conservative health care reform, and that's what we're doing so that we do not pull the rug out from anybody who is enjoying some kind of coverage they have today. So we want to have a stable transition. And there are a few of the points that I think are really important to just bring peace and mind to Americans who are concerned about all that's going on here, is we want to protect people with pre-existing conditions. We think that that's very important. That has actually been a cornerstone of Republican health care proposals all along. In 2009, I, along with Congressman Devin Nunes, Senator Tom Coburn, Richard Burr, offered the Patient's Choice Act. It was one of our alternatives to Obamacare. Again, like many other Republican alternatives, we had an answer for people with pre-existing conditions, and we have one here. All of our Republican health care alternatives have always agreed with the idea of letting young people stay in their parents' plans until they're 26. We can retain that. What our goal is to do is to provide universal access to quality, affordable health care. Here's another issue with Obamacare. Obamacare is not just the individual market that you think of the Obamacare subsidies. It was also a taking over of the Medicaid program. Here's the problem with Medicaid. Medicaid is a program that is Washington controlled, and it is done in such a way that it stops innovation and experimentation at the state level. It makes it harder for states to customize the Medicaid population and the Medicaid program to work for their particular states. And as a result, more and more doctors just don't take Medicaid. I mean, what good is your coverage if you can't get a doctor? And that is a huge growing problem with Medicaid. Medicaid is also growing at an unsustainable rate, so its ballooning costs are threatening the very viability of the program and our fiscal future. So what we propose is to modernize the Medicaid program. Modernize the Medicaid program along the lines that we as Republicans have been talking about for years. I think it was Ronald Reagan in like the 70s when he was governor who said the states should take over control of Medicaid. Every budget we have had as Republicans, when I was budget chair writing my roadmaps or the path to prosperity, every one of our Republican conservative budgets said, let's get Medicaid control back to the states. In an honor to the principle of federalism, give the states and the governors the freedom and the flexibility to customize the care for their low-income populations how they think needs to occur. Our problems in Wisconsin are a whole lot different than the problems they have in New York or in Nevada or in Utah or California. So we propose more efficient spending, bring the spending on Medicaid to something that is sustainable so it doesn't go bankrupt, and have a safety net for the most vulnerable. Give local control to our states and our governors so that they can craft and customize Medicaid to work for their populations. How do you protect people with pre-existing conditions? I think this is probably one of the most important issues of them all. Here is basically what happens today. Under the current system, we have costs driving up. On the current system, options are going away, as I just described. Choices are fleeting, prices are going up, and under the current system, the fatal conceit of Obamacare is that we're just going to make everybody buy our health insurance at the federal government level. Young and healthy people are going to go into the market and pay for the older, sicker people. So the young, healthy person is going to be made to buy health care, and they're going to pay for the person, who gets breast cancer in her 40s or who gets heart disease in his 50s. So take a look at this chart. The red slice here are what I would call people with pre-existing conditions, people who have real health care problems. The blue is the rest of the people in the individual market. That's the market where people don't get health insurance at their jobs, where they buy it themselves. The whole idea of Obamacare is the people on the blue side pay for the people on the red side. The people who are healthy pay for the people who are sick. It's not working, and that's why it's in a death spiral. Here's how we propose to tackle this problem. We want to have a system where we encourage states with federal funding to set up risk pools and reinsurance mechanisms. So, for example, in Wisconsin, we had a great risk pool that actually worked so that people with real high health care costs and diseases and pre-existing conditions could still get affordable health care. Well, Obamacare repealed that. They had a great risk pool reinsurance system in Utah, a good one in Washington State. All those are gone under Obamacare. Here's how they work, and here's how our system would work. We would directly support the people with pre-existing conditions. Let me give you a sense of this. 1% of the people in these markets drive 23% of the costs. 1% of the people in the individual health insurance market drive 23% of the costs. So a reassurance program is to cover more than just the 1%, to cover the people who have high health care costs. So by having state innovation funds to go to the states to set up these reinsurance programs, we would directly subsidize the people who have pre-existing conditions. Direct support for the people with pre-existing conditions so that everybody else has cheaper health insurance. What you do when you do this is the individual market, the people who don't have pre-existing conditions, they have much more stable prices. Let me give you an example. Take a small business that has 40 employees. Let's say that 4 people in that business get cancer. Well, under that business has to pay for all those cancer patients, all those cancer treatments. So the other 36 people in that 40-person pool get hit with much, much higher premiums to pay for the 4 that got cancer. That's how insurance works today. And that is one of the reasons why this thing is going bankrupt. Here's our solution. Let's make sure we just cover the people who have pre-existing conditions. Make sure that reinsurance or risk pools kick in for those 4 people in that small business that get cancer, subsidize that coverage, and what you do by doing that is you dramatically lower and stabilize the price of insurance for everybody else. So those other 36 people in that small business have predictable prices, lower prices. That brings you more choice, more competition, and lower prices for the vast, vast majority of Americans who are not in the pre-existing condition category. So directly subsidize them through state-based risk and reinsurance pool programs that we would finance with support from the federal government to attack this problem and let health insurance stabilize, go down in price. Here's another thing that we think is extremely important. One of the problems we have is we don't really have a consumer dynamic in healthcare. People don't always care what things cost or how good care is going to be because they don't get that information. We actually immunize or block the ability for people to actually see what things cost in healthcare or to act like a consumer. Let me give you an example. Jana and I have 3 kids. They're 33 months apart. We call them Irish triplets. Our 3 kids had 3 tonsillectomies over the course of 3 years in Janesville, Wisconsin, from the same ENT at the same hospital. At each one of these times, I tried to find out, what's this tonsillectomy going to cost? Never could I get that answer to that question. I only found out what it costs months after those procedures when I got various bills from the ENT, the ear, nose, and throat doctor, from the anesthesiologist, from the hospital. And the variation of price between those 3 procedures from the same doctor in the same hospital within 3 years was huge. One of them, the recovery bill, the recovery for my son, he sat in a lazy boy, ate Jell-O, watched SpongeBob for 2 hours. That was $1,400. I mean, this stuff is crazy. We don't shop like this for anything else we buy in our life. Why should we shop like this for health care? And so what health savings accounts achieves, this is the law that I helped write in 2003, something that we as conservatives have been fighting for the whole time, is we want to increase health savings accounts, which is what we do in this bill, so we have more competition and lower costs. Here's the point I'm trying to make. In 2000, I got LASIK surgery. The reason I can see you all so well is because in 2000, I got this LASIK surgery, which was elective. Insurance didn't cover it. And so I knew exactly what the procedure was going to cost up front. And since then, this excimer laser that does this procedure has been revolutionized 3 times, and the price is lower. So in this area of healthcare, quality went up and costs went down because I cared as a consumer what it was. So it's not that that dynamic cannot happen in healthcare, it's that it isn't happening throughout most of healthcare. And what health savings accounts does is it helps hardworking taxpayers get access to affordable solutions to help them pay for their out-of-pocket costs, but it's also their skin in the game, their money. If they save money by saying to a hospital or a doctor or a healthcare provider, what is this going to cost me? Where's the best value for my money? If we can bring that consumer pressure to bear in healthcare, we can dramatically enlist the support of millions of Americans to help us fix this healthcare problem. And that's one of the critical things we're trying to achieve here. Instead of using OPM, other people's money, to pay for healthcare that you don't care what things cost, we want to harness the power of the marketplace, the power of the consumer, of the patient and the doctor to demand better services, to demand better quality. We want transparency on price, on quality, and an economic incentive to act on that thing so that we can bring consumers to the bear. This is what we say, this is what we mean when we say we want a patient healthcare system. Okay, here is a really important part of our American Health Care Act, refundable tax credits. I want to explain exactly what we mean when we say this. Under the current Obamacare system, we have a Washington-controlled system with skyrocketing premiums and dwindling choices. It's a death spiral, it's collapsing, government makes you buy what you want to buy, and it's an open-ended subsidy for a lot of Americans. Our solution is a portable monthly tax credit. This is why we believe this is the right way to go. We want a market-based system which will give us lower costs, more competition, and more choices. There's a real problem in the tax code today in that the tax code discriminates against people who don't get health care from their job. If you're working and you're not on Medicaid, and you have a job that's paying you 10, 12, 15 bucks an hour, and that job does not give you health insurance, there's nothing that the tax code does to help you buy health insurance. If you do have health care from your job, you have an open-ended tax benefit. So what we're saying is that's really kind of not fair to the man or woman who's working at a job that doesn't get health insurance offered to them. Let's equalize the tax treatment of health care and give people the same kind of tax benefit to go buy health insurance if they don't get it from their job. And giving a person a monthly portable tax credit gives them the ability up front to go buy health insurance of their choosing. And here's the key. You buy what you want to buy. If you don't want to use your tax credit to go buy health insurance, you don't have to. If you don't want to buy this plan, you want to buy that plan, go for it. It's your choice. It's freedom. It's called free market health care. The states get to set up their own health insurance systems. The states get to set up their own regulations. so that you can buy whatever you want to buy where you live. That is called patient's choice. That is called a patient-centered system. And that is one of the biggest tools we believe can be used to replace Obamacare. This is part of replacing Obamacare with a system that works to give everybody universal access to affordable coverage. Now, here is where we stand. The current system is riddled with endless regulations that are driving up costs and limiting choices for consumers, and you see how the collapse is occurring. Our solution, greater consumer options. The patient is the nucleus of the healthcare system. We don't want insurance companies becoming monopolies looking for favoritism in a cronyistic way at Washington. We want health insurers, hospitals, doctors, all providers of healthcare benefits competing against each other for our business as consumers. That is how the great American free enterprise system works in all other aspects of our lives and our economy. That's what should work in this system as well. So the result, you choose the plan that meets your needs. You buy what you want to buy, not what the government tells you to buy. So our goal here is final as this: lower costs, more choices, patients in control, universal access to care. There are 2 points I would make in conclusion. We as Republicans have been waiting 7 years to do this. We as Republicans who fought the creation of this law and accurately predicted that it would not work, ran for office in 2010, in 2012, in 2014, and in 2016 on a promise that we would, if given the ability, we would repeal and replace this law. How many people running for Congress and the Senate did you hear say that? How many times did you hear President Donald Trump, when he was candidate Donald Trump, say that? This is the closest we will ever get to repealing and replacing Obamacare. The time is here, the time is now. This is the moment, and this is the closest this will ever happen. It really comes down to a binary choice. We now have the ability, through the budget rules that we have in the Senate, with our three-pronged approach, to actually make good on our word. We told people in 2016 what it would look like when we had the chance to replace Obamacare. That was our Better Way plan. That's what this is. So we said in 2016 to our citizens, to the American people, to our constituents, if you give us this chance, this opportunity, this is what we'll do. Now is our chance and our opportunity to do it. Questions? Chad.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You say this is a binary choice. A two-part question here. Why would somebody not believe this is take it or leave it when you hear from members of the Freedom Caucus and conservatives say take your bill or change it? And number two, when the Democrats approved cap and trade in the summer of 2009, there was much criticism of a manager's amendment, which was put in at the end, to make that bill ripe for passage on the floor. When we hear these criticisms from Republicans, why would we expect something like that not to emerge in this case to make that bill okay to pass and get their votes?
So I would answer it in this way. What people are talking about, and there's a lot of frustration, a lot of confusion, frankly, out there among conservative groups and even among members, is reconciliation has certain limits. So there are folks who would love to see us put in this reconciliation bill all these other ideas. One conservative group is saying, by golly, you better put shopping across state lines in this bill or else we're not going to support it. Guess what, Chad? If we did that, we wouldn't be able to pass this bill. It would be filibustered in the Senate. It wouldn't even come up for a vote. So the last thing we want to do is prevent our ability to actually get law made. So it really is a conversation about the third prong approach. The other bills we're going to pass outside of reconciliation, which in the House, we're a majority body, we can pass, that go to the Senate. So much of the conversations are about moving this other agenda on the same track around the same time to get these things done. The last point is, as you know the process, but a lot of people don't, we're going through 4 different committees. That's how legislation works through regular order. We just did the Ways and Means Committee last night. We're in the middle of the Commerce Committee. Next week it goes to the Budget Committee, and then it goes to the Rules Committee before it goes to the House floor. The bill will be out there for 3 weeks to be looked at. Go to readthebill.gop. It's a 123-page bill. It's not 2,000 pages of something that they just whipped together and flipped to the floor like they did. They didn't we didn't write it in Harry Reid's office on Christmas Eve. This was written by our committees. And let's back up a second even further. This bill has been worked on for a year. This bill was worked on from January to June last year so that we could offer our constituents and the American people in our Better Way agenda what we would replace Obamacare with. We offered it up in June. We ran on it all through the election, and now we've translated it into legislation. And even backing up further, these two key components, block granting Medicaid back to the states, defederalizing an entitlement, putting a cap on it, that is something that conservatives have been talking about and dreaming about for decades. And repealing another entitlement, Obamacare, its mandates, its subsidies, its taxes, and replacing it with Republican free market healthcare tax policy. If you told me 10 years ago this is where we would be, I'd think I'd be in a dream. I'd be doing backflips. To conservatives who've been fighting for healthcare reform, this is so exciting. And so what's happening now is members realize this is the chance, this is the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So naturally in the legislative process, people are saying, well, I'd love to have this in there, I'd love to have that in there. That's the legislative process. That's what we're going through. And what people are sort of learning is this reconciliation tool is pretty tight. There's a lot of stuff we would love to put in the bill, but unfortunately the Senate rules don't allow us to do that. And that's where you see a lot of confusion and a lot of frustration, understandably so. But that's also why we have a three-pronged approach. Administrative actions by Tom Price at HHS, and the additional legislation that we're going to move as well.
And so just to clarify, not to belabor the point, so you're saying that this bill was crafted in a way so it would meet the reconciliation Byrd test in the Senate.
Correct.
Ergo, there couldn't be much change to this, and you have
correct.
The other option.
Yeah,
so there's not many changes.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what we have to do when we get our score, because as you know, when you go to authorizing committees, you typically don't go with your score ready. When we get our score, I'm sure we'll probably have to make some tweaks and adjustments. That happens every time we do reconciliation. But yes, this bill is written so that it's called privileged. This bill is written so that it can't be filibustered, so that they have to bring it up and vote on it in the Senate. And if we put things in this bill that take that privilege off of it so that it's not reconciliation, they won't even vote on it. They will filibuster it and they won't even vote on it. So that's what I mean when I say this is the closest we've been to repealing and replacing Obamacare. And let me just say it again. This is the closest we will ever get to repealing and replacing Obamacare. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, how did you come up with the amount that you would give out in tax credits, and why should a family that makes $140,000 a year get the same amount as a family that makes $40,000?
It's a really good question. So the amount of the tax credits is based upon the way insurance works. And it's modeled after the Tom Price legislation, which he had last year, which is adjust for age and family size. Because the older a person gets, the more costly their health care is. That's how insurance is written. So the tax credit adjusts more tax credit for the person's age. And obviously, if you have a bigger family, you have more health care costs, so a bigger tax credit. Now, why is the cap set where it is? And that's something, by the way, 12 members of the Freedom Caucus, for example, were co-sponsors of the Price legislation just last December, which is this kind of a tax credit situation. A lot of our members, through our feedback, we had 7 member listening sessions in February, 4 conferences, getting feedback from our members on this draft of this legislation, getting their ideas. And one of the concerns was we should cap this credit. So like a millionaire that doesn't get health care from their work, but as a millionaire doesn't get a tax credit. So that was something that everybody agreed with, and the Ways and Means Committee made that adjustment. But the reason it's set where it is we don't want to have a job penalty. Go back a few years ago, and when CBO said Obamacare produces job lock, Obamacare says that the equivalent of 2 to 3 million people will not go into the workforce, will not take jobs because of the way the Obamacare subsidies work. What I mean when I say that is, if you set that credit limit too low and a person loses their credit by getting a raise or advancing in life, you don't want to disincentivize that. So they're set at such a level that that wouldn't occur. Or they're set at such a level so that it really is for a middle-income family or even an upper-middle-income family, so that we never tell a person, don't take that raise, don't get that job, don't take that promotion. We don't want federal tax law or tax credits to ever encourage a person not to advance, not to take a job, not to get a raise. That's why.
Where's the $2,000 figure come from?
Let me go in the back.
Taylor Township, CNBC. You'll need companies on board to provide the optionality that you're talking about. And almost every industry organization has come out against this. The reason why there isn't as much participation as customers might like is because these companies can't offer these products and still make money.
Yeah.
How do you get
It's a great example. Here's what people are not seeing, which is number two. Tom Price, for legal reasons, can't tell you what he's thinking about doing. There's laws that prevent that. We can do so much deregulation through the executive branch by the Secretary of Health and Human Services. He actually just put one regulation out the other day, which will go a long ways toward lowering the cost of health insurance. So they haven't even seen yet what our Secretary at HHS can do in number two, in phase two here, where they actually can dramatically lower the price of health insurance. So those companies haven't seen that yet.
So there are no concessions.
So let me just finish. Don't interrupt if you don't mind. Here's the other point. We have basically a few options in front of us. Number one, do nothing, let the system collapse. What the insurers are telling us is, if you thought a 25% average premium increase was rough in 2017, it's going to be a whole lot more than that in 2018, and more insurers are going to pull out. So the insurers are telling us, if we don't know what's going on come late spring, we're going to have massive premium increases and pullouts, and you'll collapse the individual market. What they also tell us, though, is if you only repeal the law, just gut and repeal the law, as some folks are suggesting, then you'll have triple-digit premium increases, and you'll collapse the individual market. You got to remember, if we just repeal Obamacare, it's not like life in the world goes back to life before Obamacare. Obamacare did so much damage to the U.S. health insurance system that it's not as if you can just go back to the day before. So that's why we are offering a better way. That's why we're offering the American Health Care Act. That's why we're offering a system that brings choice and competition back into the marketplace, gives people to the use of risk pools, health savings accounts, and tax credits the ability to go find affordable coverage, and that brings insurers back into the marketplace. The insurers are telling us that will bring insurers back into the marketplace. If they can actually offer the plans that people want to buy, not the plans that people are making them buy, they'll have more plans being offered. There'll be more choice and more competition. That is what brings down costs. And in conjunction with all the administrative things that Tom Price can do, those efforts together can help dramatically save our system and give us low-cost health insurance, better quality health insurance, and access to affordable health insurance. Don't forget how all this works together. Subsidize the sick and the pre-existing condition through risk pools and reinsurance. Health savings accounts to bring the consumer in the marketplace, to put pressure on providers to compete for our business based on cost and quality. And then give families who have jobs but don't have the kind of jobs that gives them health insurance benefits the same kind of tax benefit everybody else gets. So they, too, at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the month, can go buy a plan that best meets their needs. That is how you fix and save this system from the crash that it is occurring. And we're very, very confident that will work that way. Thank you for indulging me. Thank you for putting up with my town hall presentation. I just think it's really important to try and iron out all the differences, to show that there's folks who say, gosh, you should have this and that in this bill. Reconciliation doesn't let you do it. We're doing it here. People who say, well, these regulations are so expensive and so costly. Tom Price at HHS can fix those things. We can fix this problem. We promised the American people we would fix this problem. And the way to fix this problem is to repeal Obamacare and replace it with a patient-centered, market-based system. This is something that we as conservatives have been dreaming about for decades. This is the chance, and the best and only chance we're going to get. And that's why I'm really excited. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Hallelujah. to you, ladies of Spain, for we've received orders for to sail for old England, and hope very shortly to see you again. We'll rant and we'll roar like true British sailors. We'll rant and we'll rove across the salt sea, till we strike soundings in the channel of old England, from Ushant to sailing to city for the first land we made was a point called the Dead Man. Next Ram's Head off the Myth, Stark, Portland and White. We sailed then by Beachy, by Fairley and Dungeness, and bore straight away for the south, for the south, for the right. And we'll roar like true British sailors, we'll rat and we'll roar across the sea, till we strike soundings in the channel of old England, from Ushant to sailing to city for thirsty for every good man drink up a full bumper. strike soundings in the channel of old England. From Ushant to Scilly is 34 leagues. Farewell and adieu to you, fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu to you, ladies of Spain, for we've received orders for to sail for old England.
wait just a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. You go ahead.
Sean here.
Whenever you're ready. Thank you to CNN viewers
I'll sit down.
around the world.
Good to see you.
Good to see you guys. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to thank you. Well, appreciate the John Roberts fact checking from the seats. Good morning. Good afternoon. It's not my fault. It's on the paper. After receiving his daily intelligence briefing this morning, the president led a National Economic Council listening session with CEOs of small and community banks. Since 2008, the number of small banks has declined 30%. The dramatic increase in regulation following the financial crisis has been a major driving force in the decline of these banks. Dodd-Frank alone has resulted in 22,000 pages of new regulations. While large banks can hire armies of compliance officers whose sole purpose it is to ensure they meet the ever-growing number of regulations, it increases the cost of doing business for community banks, leading some not to engage in some forms of lending or simply due to the time and costs involved. Our community banks are key funding sources for small business owners, entrepreneurs, farmers, and ranchers across the country, many of whom can't qualify for traditional loans. They provide approximately half of all loans to small businesses. By reforming the regulatory system so that it is efficient, effective, and appropriately tailored, we will stop treating these critical institutions in our communities the same as banks that have exponentially more in assets, enabling them to engage even more with small businesses and entrepreneurs that stimulate local economies. The banks participating in this listening sessions are members of the American Bankers Association and the Independent Community Bankers of America. A full participant list is available to those who are interested. Yesterday, I noted the continued signs of good news in our economy in terms of hiring, and the morning reports showed that consumer comfort has risen to the highest level in a decade. I'm sure last night you also saw the report that illegal southwest border crossings are down by an extraordinary 40%, a significant deviation even when you consider the seasonal trends. These measures reflect that both the economy and the border are already responding to the president's agenda, even while we're still in the beginning stages of putting his policies in place. The country and the world are clearly ready and waiting for the change that the president campaigned on and is already delivering. Right now, the president is holding a legislative affairs lunch with OMB Director Mulvaney and key members of Congress on his plans for the federal budget and repeal and replace that we've talked about. This is just the latest opportunity to continue the dialogue between the president and members on Capitol Hill on turning his ambitious agenda into action. The strong relationship between president and congressional leaders will be key as the budget process moves along. As Director Mulvaney has been saying, our budget blueprint will be released in mid-March, and the president is working collaboratively with both his cabinet and Congress to create a budget that keeps the president's promises to secure the country and make the most efficient use of taxpayer money. In attendance at the meeting from Capitol Hill are Senator Crapo, the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, Chairman Cochran, the Senate Chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Senator Mike Enzi, the Chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, Senator Bob Corker of the Senate, the member of the Senate Budget Committee, Congresswoman Black, the Chairman of the House Budget Committee, Congressman Thornberry, the Chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio, Congressman Meadows of North Carolina, the Chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, and Congressman Rokita of Indiana. Later this afternoon, the president will meet with former Secretary of Commerce Pete Peterson. Then the president has a meeting with Secretary of Homeland Security Kelly and the Director of the CIA, Mike Pompeo. And finally, the president will make remarks to the Senate Youth Program around 4 o'clock today, a tradition that began with President Kennedy and has continued through every administration. The president's honored to be speaking to this distinguished group of young men and women who are interested in pursuing careers in public service. I also want to mention that right about now, the Vice President is giving the keynote remarks at the Latino Coalition's Policy Summit. His remarks focus on the particularly negative impact of Obamacare on small businesses, many of who've been unable to hire more workers or were forced to scale down their operation due to high taxes and burdensome requirements that were imposed by the law. The president's dedicated to improving health care system for every American, including small business owners who've especially have had to suffer through complying with thousands of pages of regulations and rules. That's exactly why he's working with Congress to enact the American Health Care Act, which he was glad to wake up this morning and see approved by the House Ways and Means Committee. Also today, the president was pleased to see his ambassador to Israel, David Freeman, voted out of committee. We had hoped to see Seema Verma, who would be confirmed as the administrator this week as the administrator of Health Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services at the Department of Health and Human Services. Unfortunately, Senate Democrats continue to unnecessarily delay her confirmation. At this critical time, while we're talking about health care, it's ironic that they refuse to consider someone with such amazing expertise in this area. Seema Verma has worked for over 20 years in healthcare policy. She has redesigned Medicaid programs in several states, including Indiana, Iowa, Ohio, and Kentucky. She's worked with governor's offices, state Medicaid agencies, state health departments, state departments of insurance, as well as private companies and foundations. She's unquestionably and uniquely qualified for her position, and especially now that health reform is at the top of the president's agenda, it's time to get her in place. This delay by Senate Democrats at this critical time is unacceptable. On a scheduling note for the weekend, the vice president announced yesterday that he'll be in Louisville, Kentucky on Saturday with Governor Bevin. The vice president's office will have further details for you on that trip as we get closer. Finally, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that today is the 10-year anniversary of the disappearance of former FBI agent Robert Levinson from Kish Island, Iran. The Trump administration remains unwavering in our commitment to locate Mr. Levinson and bring him home. The Levinson family has suffered far too long, and we will not rest until his case is resolved. And with that, I'll take your questions. Hallie Jackson.
I got a couple of topics for you, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Julian Assange says the CIA has lost control of its entire cyber weapons arsenal. Does the president agree?
I think, as we've commented before, there's grave concern that the president has about the release of national security and classified information that threatens and undermines our nation's security. Obviously, he believes that the systems at the CIA are outdated and need to be updated. We are not commenting on the current situation as is U.S. government policy, but I think the situation technology-wise at the CIA, the president's acknowledged, needs to be updated. The CIA put out a statement regarding the current situation, and I would refer you to that.
Two just follow-ups on that. Is he going to talk about that with Mike Pompeo today?
He gets a daily briefing from the director, and I'm not privy to the contents of his discussion, but obviously issues of national security, including that, are probably something that gets discussed.
And then some Republicans have said Julian Assange should be in prison. Does the president agree?
I think the U.S. government's had a position on Julian Assange's position in the past, and I don't see anything that's changed that. He has compromised in the past and undermined our national security, and I think I'll leave it up to the Department of Justice to further comment on their disposition of him. John.
Second topic was on healthcare.
Second topic was like
Two topics. So,
interview, not a press conference.
Get this one. The president tweeted just a little bit ago that he believes that healthcare is coming along great. We've also been watching Paul Ryan deliver a pretty lengthy PowerPoint presentation, seeming aimed at convincing Republicans to get on board this plan. Isn't that a sign that healthcare is not actually coming along great?
I think anybody who's been in Washington for a few days or longer recognizes that any major piece of legislation takes a lot of explanation. The president's been very committed to talking to members of Congress. He had another meeting last night. Something as complicated as this that deals with 1/5 of our economy, and there's a major takeover of our healthcare system, isn't a simple thing. It's a major, complicated piece of legislation that's got three prongs to it, and this is the first one, the reconciliation piece that starts to chip away at finally repealing Obamacare. When they passed Obamacare, they rushed it so quick, they gave the then Secretary of Health and Human Services great authority to enact certain aspects of it. That would be our phase two, is having Secretary Price go through the pieces of Obamacare that he has been given the authority to when they passed it, to help unwind a lot of the things they did. And then phase three is stuff that has to be done through other pieces of legislation that does stuff like allow people to sell insurance across state lines, that allows small businesses to pool. So there's a lot of facets to getting this pushed through. And I think that one of the things that we've been able to do quite effectively is talk to members, especially in the House, but the Vice President's been very active on both sides of the chambers, both chambers, to communicate how this is a comprehensive strategy in three prongs to repeal and replace it with something more effective.
Will he, for example, roll back Medicaid expansion freezing until 2018?
Look, Hallie, I think this is going through the process of it's working its way through Ways and Means. Today, there's a markup in the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and I think that's where we're going to continue to see action in the House. And then when it goes to the Senate, the President will continue to engage very actively with the House and the Senate to get this done.
Sean, what is...
I didn't call.
Sean, thank you, Sean. New York City First Lady Charlene McRae said in a statement that Donald Trump should keep his hands off women's bodies, women's health care, and Planned Parenthood, which has done just fine without President Trump's advice. I wanted to know what the response from the White House was on this.
Well, I mean, with respect to Planned Parenthood, specifically, the president's very clear that he's pro-life. We've worked with them to talk about making sure that there's a difference between taxpayer funding of abortion and women's health services. We have, and the president has committed to making sure that funds for women health community centers is going to be reflected by a substantial increase in his budget. He's committed to doing that. And he's trying to figure out a way to make sure that the focus of taxpayer money is spread towards community centers that provide vital health services to women, and that we're not using taxpayer funds for abortion. John Roberts.
Just want to follow on Hallie in an unrelated topic, just so you're prepared. On health care, Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas today sent out a series of tweets in which he basically said this is dead on arrival in the Senate. Go back to the drawing board, adding that it's absurd for the committees to be voting on something that hasn't even been scored yet. What does the president think of what Senator Cotton said today? Does he plan on having a conversation with him?
Well, we're going to engage. He has talked to Senator Cotton. We'll continue to talk to any senator that has questions or concerns or ideas. It went through the Ways and Means Committee last night. I think they started at something like 10:15 yesterday morning. It is an 18-hour. I don't believe he's talked to Senator Cotton. He's meeting with members right now. As I just mentioned, he had dinner last night with Senator Cruz. He's continuing to work both sides of the aisle, both chambers. As I mentioned yesterday, I think you're going to see a very aggressive, a very robust push. We continue to have the team out talking to local media, local radio, op-eds placed, talking to local leaders. We believe that the more we talk about the comprehensive three-prong approach that we have to doing a lot of the things that conservatives have talked about, to bring back cost containment, to get people to be more patient-centered in the healthcare decisions they make, allow more choices, is going to bring people on board. But the thing that's really interesting, John, about the current approach is that no matter where you are, especially on the conservative side, you cannot possibly believe that the current healthcare system is an effective program. It is a monstrosity. It is a government gone wrong. And I think
I hear that, but he
I
doesn't
understand
believe that this is the way to
and I
fix
think
it.
that we will continue to engage with him and other members of the House and Senate that have ideas. But it's going to continue to work its way through the process. As I mentioned, it went through the House Ways and Means Committee. It's currently going through the House Energy and Commerce Committee. When the House passes it and it goes over to the Senate, I'm sure Senator Cotton and other senators will have an opportunity to have their say. That's part of the process. We welcome his ideas and his thoughts, as we do with other senators. But the president has continued to do tremendous outreach, and our staff has continued to do that. Mick Mulvaney's been on the Hill. Vice President Pence had maintained a very aggressive schedule, as well as other members of the administration. And we're going to get this thing passed with all of their input and ideas.
Was the president aware that Lieutenant General Michael Flynn was acting as a foreign agent when he appointed him to be the National Security Advisor?
I don't believe that was known. I would refer you to General Flynn and to the Department of Justice in terms of the filings that have been made.
Had the president have known that, would he have appointed him?
I don't know, John. That's a hypothetical that I'm not prepared to ask. I don't know what he discussed prior to being appointed in terms of his background, his resume, his client base. I don't know any of that. I know that from what I've read that he has filed the appropriate forms with the Department of Justice, and I think you should ask him and subsequently them if you have any questions about the specific filing. John, go ahead.
Just following up on Senator Cotton, he told me just a short while ago that he believes that this bill might actually make things worse than the current Obamacare. What do you say to Senator Cotton?
Well, I respectfully disagree, and I think that I hope we have an opportunity for the team to continue to not only talk to him about what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it, but that we'd love to hear his ideas. I mean, this isn't, as I mentioned the last couple of days, we're not jamming this down people's throat. We're welcoming ideas and thoughts. We think this is the vehicle to restore a patient-centered healthcare bill, drive down costs. And I think Senator Cotton clearly recognizes that the current version of health care that's out there right now is not sustainable. And so we welcome his input into this process. We think that the work that we've done prior to putting this together with the House is something that reflects a lot of the best ideas, and we would continue to welcome his input on this.
Are you open to major changes?
Hold on, Charlie. I'm not open to.
Well,
I think
the
the
White House
president.
open to major changes, or is it?
I think the president has said before he wants to hear members' ideas. He believes that this bill encompasses the best of ideas and the best way forward. But again, we're going to let the process work its will through the House and then subsequently through the Senate. And if members have ideas, we want to hear them, want them to be part of it. It's not. This isn't getting jammed through, and we welcome that. And that's why the president continues to meet with folks. You know, he met with individuals yesterday. He's continuing to meet with them today. He's going to be hitting the road. He wants to hear members of Congress, outside groups, physicians, healthcare providers, patients. But he wants people to have an input in this to make sure that we have the best possible bill that serves their needs, and that we don't look back like we do now with Obamacare and say, I wish we had done this right. We've got a system that frankly isn't working. And I think that no matter where you are on the political spectrum, you've got to admit that either you or a loved one or a friend or a colleague isn't getting the care they deserve or isn't paying what they thought they'd be paying. And I think we have to do this right so that we don't look back the way we do now and regret the way that it was done. Charlie.
Senate and House conservatives have said that they want a sort of a return to the 2015 Obamacare repeal effort. If that effort landed on the president's desk, would he sign it?
I think the effort that's going through right now is the vehicle that's is what people are on board with. I think one of the things that we have to remember is that the process, this three-pronged progress, is done for a particular reason. The reconciliation process, which I know for most people, it sounds like a very arcane inside baseball congressional term, but it only allows for certain things to happen in that repeal process. And that's why we've been very clear, and I think Paul Ryan laid out, Dr. Price has laid it out, and Mick Mulvaney's laying it out when he goes up to the Hill, that there's a reason that we keep talking about it in three prongs. Because there's only so many things that you are legally allowed to do through the reconciliation process. When the Democrats jammed this through, they did it in a way that they did it basically in two steps. They jammed it through the reconciliation process, number one. And number two, they gave broad authority to the Secretary of Health and Human Services so at the time that she could unilaterally do certain things with healthcare and implement certain things that we now have to undo in the same way. What we've done that's different, though, is frankly at a third prong, which allows for additional legislative vehicles that will go through the House and then in the Senate that will allow some of the core conservative principles that we've talked about for, frankly, decades, about allowing more competition, allowing people to pool, allowing people to do things that we think will allow lower prices to come out of the process. And I think that's a big difference in how...
So if a repeal lands on the president's desk, he would not sign it?
He is going to land on his desk because we're going to go through this process.
Repeal without replace.
Well, again, I think the way that we're doing now, I think is the right and the responsible way to do this. This bill will land on the president's desk. He will sign it. We will repeal Obamacare, and we'll put into place a system that will be patient-centered, that will allow the American people to have greater choice and lower costs. Blake.
Sean, seeing the pushback that you're getting so far with healthcare, do you think it is realistic to have both healthcare and tax reform done in 2017? And I ask you that because Mitch McConnell was asked about this day, and he talked about there being certain constraints and that the tax reform portion of it could be a 2018 item.
I think we feel very confident that we're going to get a lot done, continue to get a lot done this year. Tax reform's high on the president's priority list. I think it's high on the American people's priority list, and especially as April grows closer and closer and people look down at their federal tax form and realize how much they're paying. And we see companies pledging to come back, recognizing that these companies bought into the president's vision and agenda to make America more tax and regulatory friendly, so that they would create jobs, manufacture more here. That's something that he's committed to. He understands how important it is. Look, the president's uniquely qualified as a businessman, a successful businessman, to understand what a good business climate does to job creation and to manufacturing. And I think his commitment isn't just a campaign promise, it's something that he has lived by for decades now, understanding that that's what spurs economic growth. That makes one place more attractive to invest in or to hire more people or to grow jobs. And so for him, this is deeply personal. And I think that you're going to see Secretary Mnuchin and others work on the contours of that in the next several weeks, but we intend to maintain to the schedule that he laid out.
The August portion is still the timeline.
That's right. Eamon?
Congressman Elijah Cummings was here yesterday.
Yeah.
He said that the president was enthusiastic about his bill to cut drug prices. Is the president enthusiastic about that? And if he is, how much pain should drug companies be prepared to take here in this effort?
Ironic that you're talking about drug companies and pain. But maybe there's a pill for that. But yeah, I think the president, as you know, one of the reasons that he reached out to Elijah Cummings initially is because they share that. And I think, frankly, yesterday came to a lot of other areas where I think that they can find common ground and work on issues. And I know that drug prices is something that he understands near and dear, is helping many people get the care that they need, but the rising cost is something that is, so I think as we look at the vehicle in terms of the specific legislation, they share a commitment to it, and I think that there will be continued follow-ups, not just between Congressman Cummings but others, as to what the best piece of legislation is and how we get that home.
The Democrats said that they're going to drop this bill in 2 weeks. Is
Okay.
the president prepared to push a
Well,
Democrat
I
bill on
think,
Capitol
yeah,
Hill?
I think that's a bigger conversation that we have to have, Eamon, with House leadership in terms of maybe it is that right vehicle. Maybe Speaker Ryan and Leader McCarthy and Chairman Brady have other ways to achieve the same goal or work with Congressman Cummings. I don't want to be prescriptive to the House as to how they work their will, but I know that the president has a commitment to that topic, and then he wants to work with Congressman Cummings and others who share that same commitment. John Gizzi.
Thanks a lot, Sean.
John Gizzi.
Gizzi.
You're both good looking, Johns, but I'll come back.
Thank you, Sean. 2 questions. And first, a Japanese news service is reporting this morning that the president will have a meeting with President Xi Jinping of China in April. Does this mean that there is a new meeting before their scheduled meeting at the G20 in July?
I'm not going to comment on the president's schedule or foreign leader visits at this time, John. I think I've pretty much gotten that one down. Until I have something further for you, I'm just going to let you get on to your next question.
All right, thank you. Going back to the meeting and to your opening statement about the banks, in the last campaign, candidate Trump campaigned hard on restoring the Glass-Steagall Act, which would put a barrier between commercial and major investment banks. It, of course, was repealed in 1999, and the repeal signed by President Clinton. Senator Sanders campaigned on this as well, noted that it was in the Republican platform in Cleveland, and said in December he'd be happy to work with the Trump administration on restoring Glass-Steagall. Is there any plans for the president to meet with Senator Sanders, and is repeal of Glass-Steagall on his agenda?
There's no current schedule to meet with him. I'm sure that, as he has done with several other members of Congress from both sides of the aisle, that at some point that will be scheduled. We don't have anything on the books for now, but look, he's shown, and I think yesterday was another example, today another example of his willingness to reach across the aisle, his willingness to look into both chambers and and not just business, but labor unions and other industries where we can find common ground. And I think if Senator Sanders and others want to work with the White House on areas of ways that we can improve the financial industry, we're going to do that. So.
Still committed to restoring Glass-Steagall?
Yes. Aaron.
On infrastructure, can you give a sense of timing, where it is on the priority list, and if these new reports that say that the infrastructure in the nation is in really bad shape, does that give it new urgency?
I think the president mentioned it in the joint address. I think we're looking at a public-private partnership as a funding mechanism. There's a lot of work being done behind the scenes, and I don't want to put a timeline on that. Obviously, as I just mentioned to Blake, we're currently dealing with the repeal and replace of health care. I think we need to move on to tax reform, but that is definitely somewhere that we're trying to figure out how to move that vehicle. There'll be further discussion of that as we get closer to the budget as far as where that fits in to the piece. John Decker.
Thanks a lot, Sean. The president had this meeting last evening here at the White House with some conservative groups.
Yeah.
Out of that meeting, can you tell us whether the president was successful in twisting arms, getting these conservative groups to back this particular health care bill? And just separately, I see on the president's campaign website that there is an event, a campaign-style rally planned in Nashville, Tennessee for next week. Can you confirm that, and why did you choose Nashville, Tennessee? There's a Democratic congressman that represents Nashville. It's Jim Cooper. Are you hoping to get some Democrats behind this bill?
So on the first part of that, you saw a lot of the statements that came out last night from some of the various groups. They were very encouraging. Their guiding principle is we want to get to yes. I think one of the things that's really interesting, and I addressed it earlier, is that there's a lot of members, a lot of interested parties, a lot of groups that haven't fully heard the three-prong approach. And I think Speaker Ryan did a phenomenal job today of really laying this out. Dr. Price has done a good job. That people need to understand the totality and the comprehensive nature of this, that there are three pieces of it. And I think what happens sometimes is that the reconciliation piece of this gets lost as defining the totality of it. And people need to understand the two other pieces that achieve many goals that healthcare advocates and conservatives have fought for a long time, that allow greater competition, that allow small businesses to pool those resources together. But there's a lot of things that occur in phase 2 and phase 3 that help bring down cost and create greater choice. It's amazing when you listen to some of these meetings how often people say, I didn't realize that, and I didn't understand the full scope and totality of what the plan was. It's very encouraging, and then I think they, without getting into details, I think in a lot of cases they've shared some ideas with the president that we might be able to find some common ground on. So we'll take it one step at a time. Go ahead.
On the campaign-style rally?
I would refer that question to the campaign. I think the president's going to be traveling next week. And then, but there will be the details of that are listed on the campaign site. There is going to be, I think, additional travel announced for next week on the official side. And as we get closer to either the end of this week or the beginning of next week, I'll try to have more for you. Katie.
The president promised to immediately terminate DACA when he got in office.
Right.
It's been nearly 7 weeks tomorrow, and he still hasn't done it. Can you definitively say if he's going to get rid of DACA? And if not, is he giving them legal status? And what's the plan for Dreamers?
I think, Caitlin, we've talked about the status of that and how many steps we have to go through on immigration. In the past, I think we've made significant headway in achieving the president's priorities of starting the wall, driving down illegal immigration. The numbers that came out last night show that even when seasonally adjusted, we see a 40% dip in the people crossing our southern border. That's a very promising sign. That being said, the executive order, the second one, there was a lot of effort put into making sure that was rolled out effectively and achieved the goal of protecting the country that the president sought out to do initially. So we're continuing to take steps on immigration, both legal and illegal immigration, and as I've mentioned in the past, we'll have more as we go forward.
He does still plan to get rid of DACA.
I think the president's been very clear about how he plans to address immigration as a whole, both legal and illegal. Katie.
Sean, the president's been meeting with conservative groups, but there's also opposition on the left. Does he plan to? He brought bipartisanship to Washington finally. Does the president plan to meet with groups like the AMA and AARP, which supported Obamacare but are not supporting this bill?
I don't. It'd be ill-advised for me to start saying who he's going to, but I think that what we've shown over the last couple of weeks is the president's willingness to meet with individuals, senators, groups. So I don't want to rule in who's going to meet or out, but I think that I've said before with respect to members, and I'd say it again with respect to groups, that I think if people have ideas that will help provide a more patient-centric healthcare system that drives down costs, the president and the team here will be willing to meet with them. So I don't want to be prescriptive in terms of telling them who they have to meet with. Their day is pretty busy right now with the Hill, but I will get back to you on some of the other groups that they're going to meet with, and we'll go from there. Brian.
Two quick questions. One, this morning at the National Press Club, a local business in D.C. filed a Superior Court a suit against the president and regarding Trump Hotel. And I don't expect you to speak to that issue specifically, but their feeling was that as much as this administration has supported small business, couldn't he divest himself from this and support small business in the district? First question.
I'm really not sure how would he, in terms of what?
Well, there's 25 small businesses, restaurants in the area, and they're saying that the Trump Hotel is taking all that business away from them, and couldn't he walk away from it and help out the small business in the district?
As far as the president's, obviously the president has made very clear in that December press conference at Trump Tower, he doesn't have conflicts, and he's done everything in accordance with the guidance that he's given and gone well beyond what he ever needed to do. But obviously, you can't. Your name's on certain things, and that's a very big difference in terms of some of the properties that he owns. But he understands the importance of small business. That's why we were meeting with community banks this morning to talk about the lending that they need, whether it's small business, entrepreneurs, farmers, ranchers throughout the country. He understands the role of small business in our economy. And how many jobs they provide, and I think he's been a champion of it. April.
Second question was, in his speech before Congress last week, he said it's not too much to dream that at some point in time, and I'm paraphrasing, RFP could be on foreign soil, I'm guessing other planets. With the NASA budget being released yesterday, I believe, is there a major initiative by this administration for space exploration, or is that we're just talking dreams?
Yeah, I'm going to let Director Mulvaney get into the details of the budget next week, or whenever that. I'm trying to remember the calendar here. But when the director comes out, he'll talk about the specific funding levels. As you know, we're in the middle of this we call pass back provision, where we've sent them some top line numbers. They're sending us back their recommendations and their observations and edits and questions with respect to their budget. So we're going to take this one step at a time.
I mean, does he, when he said...
No, he's obviously, he's very keen on America's role in space, and I don't want to get into specific budget priorities or numbers until we're ready to release them. So, John,
called on me.
I'm sorry,
April.
Remember that.
It's very important.
I know, I saw the hands
Yes.
right away.
So Sean, just really fast, following up on John, we're seeing the campaign information for next week in Nashville. You said something about talking to the campaign. Who's the campaign?
I'll try to help get you a name. But there is a campaign infrastructure still in place. It would be inappropriate for me to be commenting on campaign activities from the podium. So there's a website up, the same one that was during the campaign, and I would suggest that you utilize that. But I'm not here I'm only here as an official in the government, so I don't want to get into that.
Now, yesterday, going back to Congressman Cummings, you talked about some other issues that they talked about in that meeting, but they found common ground. They talked about, and I want to hit two issues, the voter irregularities, voter fraud, and voter suppression. Where does the president see this coming together? We heard from Congressman Cummings, but where does he see? We understand he's saying that voter fraud is real when there are other people saying it's not, but then there are factual, documented cases of voter suppression. So how is there a marrying of that in this president's eyes?
Well, I think that's why he's asked Vice President Pence to look into it. I would disagree with the assertion, though. I think there's also factual, evidence of people voting illegally. We saw that in Texas a couple weeks ago, and in other places. So part of the reason that he's asking Vice President Pence to chair this task force is to look into the issue. But we welcome input in other areas, and it's an area that they'll continue to discuss. Sarah?
HBCUs. Okay. Now, also, Congressman Cummings said that when he talked to the president, and he brought up the issue of funding for HBCUs, President Trump said to Congressman Cummings that the presidents did not ask for money. Now, they came here, according to many of the presidents that I've canvassed, they came here with the intent of the fact that they were going to get some money from this executive order. And
I don't think the executive order is the...
That's what their belief was. But then what I understand that there was talk about investment in these colleges from Steve Bannon. One president wrote this down saying that we are looking for a plan from you to invest in HBCUs, and we will execute it when we get it. So, and they're looking for full funding for Title III, Pell Grant full funding, fall, spring, and summer, as well as a one-time $25 billion investment. What does this White House think about this plan that they're trying to give back to this White House, especially at a time when you're looking at cutting domestic spending?
Well, I think when they were here, we were pleased to roll out the executive order that talked about making historically black colleges and universities a priority in this administration, moving that sort of point person into the White House, so that we could coordinate a whole of government opportunities for whole. We talked about this, looking at the different educational opportunities that span government, whether it's health or investment in sciences, or even stuff like ROTC and NROTC programs that are some of these that span out of the Department of Defense. But we've got to look at how we're providing government assistance in a whole host of ways to historically black colleges and universities. I think the issue of funding will be properly addressed in the budget. And at that time, but obviously this is something that has been discussed. The president.
Is this request realistic? Is this funding request realistic?
I don't, April. I'm not going to negotiate the budget from here, but I think that the president has been made very clear that the vital role that they play in our society, and I think he's shown that initially by the executive order that he unveiled, and we will have further information for you as we get closer to the budget. Sarah.
Thanks, John. Circling back to what you said about critics characterizing the budget reconciliation bill as the entirety of repeal replace, how quickly does the president want to see Republicans move on phase 3, the companion legislation? Does he envision those unfolding simultaneously? And then given the early opposition to the budget reconciliation bill, does the president maybe want Republicans to recalibrate their strategy when it comes to that companion legislation?
I am not going to start to tell Speaker Ryan or Leader McCarthy or the whip, Mr. Scalise, how to release and when to release legislation. But I think obviously we need to make sure that members and all Americans understand the totality of this. So at a schedule that they see fit, and I'll let them unveil that schedule, that they talk about the totality of this plan and the comprehensive nature and all three prongs that make up the repeal and replace part of this. It's important, I think, though, for people to do understand that there's a commitment to do all those things that we've talked about, whether it's pooling or across state lines. There's a lot of principles and things that we've discussed that I think are important to let people to know about. I'm going to go to Lahit Jha.
Thanks. What's the President's assessment of the situation in Afghanistan? What is the assessment of the situation in Afghanistan? Because there has been a series of terrorist attacks there. And does the President plans to send additional troops to Afghanistan?
So on troops, I refer you to the Department of Defense on that one. I think we are in the middle of a comprehensive review on our policy in Afghanistan, that working with our Afghan partners and the Department of Defense and our key military leaders to create an approach to address Afghanistan to defeat ISIS. So we're in the middle of that process, and we have more. We'll update you, but I think the Department of Defense is probably the best place to go to get that. Trey.
Thanks, Sean. Today, hundreds of U.S. Marines were deployed to Syria. So I'm wondering, how involved was the president in that decision-making process, and is this part of his wider anti-ISIS strategy?
Obviously, the president was made aware of that. This is something that was done in consultation. He understands the regional issues that need to be addressed there. And again, I would refer you back to the Department of Defense on that. Vivian, yeah.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question to Haley's first set of questions on WikiLeaks. My question is,
Haley gets like 8 questions in that
the Republicans are calling for Julian Assange to, be in jail or be arrested.
Mm-hmm.
What about the tech companies that he says that he will work with to give them these CIA hacking techniques? Should there be any legal repercussions for tech companies willing to sort of embrace and use this technology that you're taking a stance against, if you will?
So number one, I'll go back to the statement that we don't comment on validating or authenticating allegations of this sort as a U.S. government in terms of U.S. government policy. I will say that the president obviously feels deeply concerned about anybody, an individual or anybody that seeks to undermine the national security of our country. I don't want to, stay within my purview here, but I do think that I would check with the Department of Justice in particular about if a program or a piece of information is classified, it remains classified regardless of whether or not it is released into the public venue or not. And so I would just suggest that someone consult with them regarding the legal repercussions of any individual or entity using any piece of still classified information or technique or product that hasn't been declassified. There's a reason that we have classification levels, and that's to protect our country and our people, and that's something that we have to maintain regardless of how it's let out. Zeke.
Two questions for you. One, back to General Flynn. How concerning is it to the President and to the White House that a registered foreign agent was selected to become was the National Security Advisor for a brief period of time?
Look, I think this is what he did for a living. I mean, he talked to, and as the President said in the press conference, talking to individuals that are within the realm of the duties you're going to perform is part of your job. I understand that, but he was being compensated. He wasn't being compensated as part of the transition, as far as I'm aware. And so he was a private citizen at the time. And when you're a private citizen, you're allowed to engage in legal activities. I don't have anything further on that, but I think there's nothing nefarious about doing anything that's legal as long as the proper paperwork and is filed.
Yeah, Sean, just real quick. It was just several reports out of the State Department from our colleagues there that on Secretary Tillerson's upcoming trip to Asia, he will not be taking any press with him on that trip. That's a breach of precedent, certainly, of the last several bipartisan administrations. Is it concerning to the White House that the administration's foreign policy might not be effectively communicated to the American public and around the world because there isn't a press corps with the Secretary of State?
Yeah, this is the first I'm learning of it. I'd be glad to follow up with you, Zeke. I don't know that. I think you all know that we have been a very transparent administration in terms of access to the President and his activities here. I'd be glad to follow up with the Department of State and follow up that you can share that with your colleagues. Margaret?
Sean, yesterday you said quite definitively there's no reason to believe there's any type of investigation with respect to the Department of Justice. Did the Justice Department give you that assurance? Because they're telling the New York Times they did not.
I'm not aware of it, but that's my point, is that we're not aware of anything, and that's why.
You've been told by the Justice Department that there is no investigation.
No.
So there might be one. You just don't know.
No, I said I'm not aware, and we're not aware, and that's why we want the House and the Senate to do what the President has asked of them to look into this. But no, we're not aware.
To discover if there is an investigation.
To look into the situation.
The Justice Department is saying, though, that they never gave you the assurances that you gave us.
Okay. No. What the assurance I gave you, Margaret, was that I'm not aware, and that is 100% accurate.
So when you said no reason to believe, it was I'm not aware
That's
if
right.
there's an investigation.
Right. I mean, I don't know that they're not interchangeable. I'm not aware. I don't believe. Look up in a thesaurus and find some other ways, but I don't know that there's a distinction there that's noteworthy. But we're not aware. I don't believe that exists, and that's based on that I've not been aware of. I mean, but that's the answer to that. I mean, someone's asking me if I'm made aware of something, and the answer is no. Then the answer is no.
Well, the question was whether he was the target of a counterintelligence.
Right, and the answer is we're not aware. I don't know how much clearer we can be on this.
So it's just that the White House is not aware if the President is the target of a counterintelligence probe.
Correct. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not sure what we're dancing around the same question.
Well, because I think yesterday when you came out and corrected and clarified, people took that as a definitive answer that in fact that was not the case.
No, it means we're not
you
aware.
said.
I don't just. That should be the definitive answer, Vivian.
Sean? Thank you. I have two questions, but a really quick follow-up to Zeke's. So can you
So that's
elaborate?
3.
2.5. So can you elaborate a little bit on to what extent Michael Flynn was involved in shaping the current Turkey policy for President Trump? I mean, was he engaging with the Turkish leaders? And
I don't have anything on that.
Okay.
You can contact the NSC on that. I'm not aware.
Okay, so for my two real questions. First, is there any official response to the lawsuit in Hawaii over the revised travel ban?
I think we feel very comfortable that the executive order that was crafted is consistent, and we're going to go forward on this. But I think, by all means, I don't want to. We feel very confident with how that was crafted and the input that was given.
Okay, thank you. And the second thing is Nigel Farage was at the Ecuadorian embassy in London today, where Julian Assange happens to be staying. We don't know if they met or not, but Was he there? I mean, he's a close ally of President Trump. Was he there in any official capacity?
I don't keep his
Was
schedule.
he delivering a message? Do you know if there was
I have no
contact
idea.
on that?
No, I have my own concerns here, keeping track of what everyone's doing. I generally don't worry about what's going on across the pond. Jonathan.
Thank you.
You already gave me one, but just to follow. So, but do you?
I'll take his. Wow. All right. I'm sorry.
But on front, the question is not what Farage was in there, but can you tell us he just wasn't there on behalf of the White House?
Sure. I don't. He is not. I'm not. This is silly. I really don't think asking where random foreign leaders are and whether or not they're there. I'm sure he was there doing whatever on behalf of either the British. He's a member of. Okay, I understand that, but I'm not. I don't keep his schedule. I'm not sure. Julie.
Thank you, Sean. Two questions on two different topics. First, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin sent a letter to Congress saying that Congress should raise the debt ceiling. We know that the Office of Management Budget Director Mick Mulvaney, when he was in Congress, he voted against raising the debt ceiling multiple times. So. Is Mulvaney going to support the raising of the debt ceiling, and does the president support that, and is he going to push Congress to do that?
I think we've got a few months to do that. I think the Secretary was making Congress very much aware. We've now been in the White House 6 weeks. We're approaching the 50th day here of this administration. I think we are trying to deal with the situation at hand. Part of the reason that the president has addressed a budget the way he has is to try to get our nation's debt deficit and budget in order. I think he's continuing to show a tremendous respect for taxpayer money, the way we spend money and bring it down. But obviously, there's certain things that are a little beyond our control when we walked into this building, and we're going to work with Secretary Mnuchin and Director Mulvaney to address this issue, and obviously work with Congress.
Second question on another cabinet secretary. Scott Pruitt said today that carbon dioxide was not the primary contributor to global warming. That obviously is at odds with the global scientific consensus. Does the president agree that?
I think that's a snippet of what Administrator Pruitt said. He went on and said, "I don't think we know conclusively. This is what we know." I would suggest that you touch base with the EPA on that. But he had a very lengthy response, and so that is just one snippet of what the administrator said at that. Anita.
Two things. One, I think you mentioned at the top, but I'm not sure, that apprehensions were down across the border. There was a question yesterday about the wall. Is the wall still needed if the apprehensions are down?
I think so, sure. The president was very clear. It's not just needed. The president committed to doing it to the American people. And I think while we can have a good month, and I think we'll see if that continues, that the president made a commitment to the American people to make sure that that this isn't just an anomaly, and that while they may be down, I think we have to do what we can to protect our country, both in terms of national security and economic security. So it's, of course, still needed, and it's a commitment that the president made. And I think one of the things that the American people, regardless of where they stand across the aisle, appreciate about this president is he's a man that has kept his word. He made commitments to them, and he's fulfilling them to make the country better. Goyle.
Sean, I said there was a second one.
I'm sorry, you did.
You have not, I think you've been asked this before, but have been reluctant to say whether President Obama and President Trump have spoken since the inauguration, although President Trump was very forthcoming about that during the transition, so I'm not sure why you wouldn't mention it. But I'm just asking that again, and there was a report yesterday that said their aides for both presidents have spoken. Can you talk to us about either of those things?
I'd be glad to follow up. Unfortunately, I did not ask the president whether or not he's spoken. I'll be back tomorrow.
Can you follow up?
Yes, I can.
About the aides?
I will.
Okay. Thank you.
I keep my word too.
Okay.
Go out.
Okay, well,
Stealing one all the way to the back.
Actually, it was me.
Lost your shot.
Look at that.
Can you tell us about policy now on Guantanamo, how it might have changed, where things are with that?
What, please?
On Guantanamo.
Yeah.
On whether the Guantanamo will be expanded, whether detainees will be brought to Guantanamo, whether they'll be transferred out, just where things are.
I don't have anything to announce with respect to its expansion or its expansion use. But I think the president has commented on the importance of Guantanamo in the past, and the need to maintain that the people who are there are not people who seek to do anyone good. They're there for a reason. and he has no plans to close it, if that's what you're asking. As far as the future use goes, in terms of expansion, I don't have anything to comment on this time. All the way back, yeah. Go, you got it. Go.
All right.
No, Goyle. You keep trying to steal his question.
Let us start two questions, please. One is that as far as the attacks on the Indian American communities across the nation, they are not new. It happened in the past also, but Indian American community recently have been having candle visions and prayers and all kind of those things, and also Indian ambassador met with the State Department officials and also with President Trump recently. So any presidential message for the Indian American community, how to stop these attacks against them?
I think with respect to, are you talking about the event in Kansas City specifically?
Another one also.
Yeah, I think the president, whether it's the event that happened in Kansas City, other events, the attacks on Jewish community centers that continue to plague us. We saw another report this morning of some unfortunate activity. I think we've got to continue to call it out. We've got to continue to root it out. We've got to continue to engage law enforcement, whatever is the applicable level of law enforcement, depending on the event. But it's something that I think all Americans should be outraged and disgusted by and stand up for the principles that unite us. And that's what the president spoke so eloquently about during his joint address, and made it very clear that while certain policies may divide us as individuals, there are certain principles that can unite us. John Frederick.
And second, sir, my question, please, I'm sorry. As far as the U.S.-India relations are concerned, they have been great in the past, and now we have two businessmen in India. Prime Minister Modi is also a businessman. Here we have President Trump, of course, a great, successful businessman. So recently, high official visits have been going on from India to the U.S., meeting the Trump and President Trump administrations or officials, including Foreign Secretary and Commerce Secretary and among others, and also from the Energy Department from India. So where do we go? What is the future of under President Trump administration, U.S.-India relations, economically, trade, and bilateral, among others?
Thank you. I think he has talked about during the campaign and the transition establishing a deeper relationship with Prime Minister Modi and U.S.-India businesses, and I think as we move forward in terms of our foreign policy, we'll have further updates on that. But he, as you know very well, he spoke very clearly and frequently about the relationship that we have and hope to continue to grow with India. John Frederick.
Sean, thank you. During the campaign, President Trump was not shy about his desire to get the United States out of these Middle Eastern wars. Yet, as a question earlier, we just sent 250 Marines into Syria. Is President Trump committed to going to Congress to receiving authorization for an AUMF or a declaration of war if we continue to deploy United States troops overseas?
Well, John, I think there's a big difference between an authorization of war than sending a few hundred advisors, and I think most in Congress would probably agree with that as well. I think that's a big difference between a hostile action and going in to address some certain concerns, whether it's certain countries in the Middle East or elsewhere. I would refer you to the Department of Defense on that one. I think the actions that he has done and taken with the advice that his generals have given him as admirals as well, is something that we will continue to work on. Yeah.
Two questions. One, first off, kind of clarifying the difference between the campaign stop and also the healthcare rollout. So Nashville will be kind of the campaign stop. How will the White House kind of pick and choose how that goes, whether it's going to be a presidential visit trying to sell the healthcare rollout or one for the campaign? And then a second question, sir.
Well, I mean, I think the campaign will make decisions with respect to how they want to spend their money and where they want to go. And the official part, the White House, will do the same. But I think that's something that every president back as far as modern history has done as well. The president will be visiting several cities over the next coming weeks to engage the American people on the need to repeal and replace and other steps that he's taking to deliver on the promises that he's made as Commander-in-Chief.
Second question, I know Senator Cruz was here for dinner last night. Can you characterize the relationship between the two men? 2018 will be here before you know it. Do you anticipate the president will be there to support him in that effort?
I think we got a few battles to get through legislatively, but I know that he enjoyed welcoming Senator and Mrs. Cruz and their 2 daughters last night to the White House. They had a very enjoyable time and a very fruitful discussion. But it's something that he is going to continue to do with members of both parties, both chambers, and not just here in Washington. I think you're going to see him continue to engage with governors and attorneys general and lieutenant governors. The president truly enjoys this level of engagement. He likes to sit down and talk about ideas, talk about the future of this country and get their input and ideas. And I think they talked a little business and a lot of personal last night, and it was a very enjoyable thing. With that, thank you guys. Have a great day. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I think tomorrow's going to be One Question Friday. Thank you all.
Has the president spoken to the FBI director about the wiretapping thing?
All right, folks, thank you very much for joining us and choosing us as your stream of choice. This was actually a pretty good presser, to be honest with you, and the chat was awesome. As you guys can tell, our chat is more focused on constructive comments, stuff that we can actually talk about. Yeah, we do joke here and there once in a while. But our chat, we try to keep it flowing as consistent as possible. That's one reason we have slow mode on, so people can actually talk to each other and talk about different issues and stuff like that. So honestly, I think that we have the best chat on YouTube, and we try to keep it that way. So expect that from other streams that we're going to have, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Thank you very much, like I said. And I hope that you guys stay here with us at Golden State Times. We will be streaming more later on today. I think there's one more event coming up. But, just always keep an eye out. If you are subscribed or if you haven't yet, click the subscription button. Join the community. We welcome you. If you just joined us, click the notification bell too, because you'll get a heads up on when we go live or we upload any videos or anything like that. Because sometimes YouTube doesn't send the notifications out to people that are just subscribed. They also have to do a second step of hitting the notification bell, the little bell right next to the subscribe button, just so they can get an extra heads up. We always try to start just a little bit before, just to get everything rolling, everything better. But we will be having a news podcast tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern with myself and Gorf. So if you guys want to check it out, it will be tomorrow, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. We are getting really, really close to 50,000 subscribers. And that is all thanks to you guys. Once we hit 50,000 subscribers, we will be giving away 3 Donald Trump hats, 3 President Trump hats. One of them is the Make America Great Again hat. It's red. The other one is a white number 45 hat, and the other one is a red number 45 hat. Now, we will pick 3 people at random, whether you just joined us now or you've been subscribed for a very long time, or you're thinking about joining the community. As long as you are subscribed to this channel, you are entered to win one of those 3 hats. So, just like I said, if you're new, click that subscribe button and enter to win. And we will be doing a lot more giveaways as we grow. So every single milestone, we will be, giving back to you guys for being so awesome, sharing the streams, being on here, giving thumbs up, all that other good stuff. So, like I said, just stay here with us and we'll continue our coverage. If you missed the conference that Julian Assange had from Wikileaks earlier today, it's on our channel, so make sure and go and check it out. And we hope that you guys enjoy that. So, like I said, more videos coming to, later on today. I think one more stream coming later on today. And we hope to see you guys tomorrow at our podcast. 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Don't forget. And see you guys then. Thank you very much to moderators that came out today. We got Deacon, Brian Knight, Siri Blue 90, And Gorf, we also had Nightbot. Nightbot's always good. So thank you very much, guys. Peace. Oh, one last thing. Sorry, folks. One more last thing. Check the links in the description below. If you guys have Facebook, make sure and head out over there and give us a thumbs up or a like or however they call it. If you have Twitter, follow us. We always put up-to-date news or things that are going on our Twitter page. Also, check out our website, goldenstatetimes.com, for anything that has to do with news, live streams, special content that we're going to only upload on our website, and also anything that has to do with the White House. We have the bill on there, the healthcare bill, if you want to read it. We also have the travel ban information on there if you guys want to check that out. And we have a bunch of PDFs that come directly from the White House. Nothing that is commentary or opinion. Nothing. It's just straight, raw information from different things that are going on at the White House. So check it out, goldenstatetimes.com, and share it with people so people can get notified. Thank you very much.